What's the best way to launch your business? This is my origin story where I explain the backstory behind how I started out and the wiggly journey that I took. And hopefully by sharing some of the potholes that I fell down, I can help you avoid falling down those yourself and help you to accelerate your journey. All right, on with the episode. I spent the last decade launching and growing companies online, all the while learning from the smartest people in growth. And now, for fun, I'm building a new side hustle business, scaling to 10, then 50k per month. The real question is, how will I do this with 2 small kids and working on another business at the same time, completely from scratch? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I share my journey growing this new side hustle online business as an already busy dad-preneur. My name is Rich Bowdler, and welcome to the Science of Launch podcast. Human memory is a really nerdy thing. It's also fascinating, and I found myself really going into the world of memory late on in my school years, and I ended up going and doing things to do with the World Memory Championships, went and competed at the World UK and then World Memory Championships, and also ended up training others. And I kind of developed this thing as a unique ability, and I'm telling you all of this because it's relevant to coaching business, because I later went on and trained people in human memory development and applied to different specific things. One example was with elite units of the British military, helping people retain key information far better than they previously had been able to. Also working with spies and corporate espionage. How I got into that is a story for another time, but that's kind of how I started out in the world of coaching, and that's really it. And I ended up after uni going and tutoring as kind of a side gig, tutoring elements of London's elite. I say elite, I guess. Really, it's just London's wealthy families who could pay expensive private tutors. And crazy, absurd things, absurd lives. I used to get flown off on private jets, on ski trips, or flown off to people's private islands to go and tutor their children and their families. Anyway, so this is going back a few years now, so 2010, 11, 12. I was fortunate enough to get some press, and also got some press about me in a national newspaper, in the category of people who were super tutors. And my specialist skill was tutoring people in advanced memory techniques and retention of knowledge, which is really useful for school exams, but also useful in other areas. And the press that I got specifically mentioned me as being the most expensive person out there. And one of my business mentors is a marketer, a guy called Dan Kennedy. He said that there's no point being the second most expensive service or second most expensive person out there as a strategy. Either be the most expensive or else you're racing to the bottom. But anyway, I was doing this and it was kind of ad hoc, and I also had a day job. My day job, I was working in the city, working as a broker, and I really wanted to leave my job and make this coaching thing either not quite a full-time thing, but I wanted it to replace my income. And it was around about this time that I read a book that I'm sure you've probably heard of called The 4-Hour Workweek by a guy called Tim Ferriss. And I really wanted to make that real. So leverage my time and income. So rather than trading hours for dollars, hours for money, create a product or leverage myself somehow. And the reason that I really wanted that was because growing up, I grew up in middle class, really stable, comfortable family background. My dad, so I saw his journey. He was a lawyer, retired a few years ago now. What I saw was he worked hard, and he worked hard for a lot of his life, certainly all of the time that I was alive. And at the end of it, yes, we had a comfortable life, there were some assets. I owned a nice house, and we had a comfortable existence. But I just thought, for somebody that has worked that hard, if I'm going to spend my life working hard, then I want to create assets and I want to create wealth so that I have greater leverage and I can help more people. And I just thought, my dad doesn't have any freedom. He's trading his life for the weekends, and I want something different. And I knew that I wanted more, and I knew that my vehicle was entrepreneurship. I was working in the city, but I just couldn't see the path, and I didn't want that path. And I knew that I wanted to create life on my own terms. And I took a bit of time out, and when I came back from an extended holiday, I remember visiting my parents and telling my dad. And this is kind of slightly by the by, but I remember my dad looking at me and saying, "You are not an entrepreneur." And I just thought at that time, well, two things. One, it was like, why would you say that? That's kind of a crazy thing to say. And I just don't believe it. I mean, I believe that anybody is capable of anything, obviously within limits, right? There's physical constraints and whatever. You can't necessarily be an Olympic athlete or if your body isn't physiologically designed that way, or whatever, or you're too old to, play Premier League football or play for the NBA or whatever. But I just thought, that's ridiculous. I just don't believe it. But also I thought, I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to do things on my own terms anyway. So anyway, I quit my job shortly after, and I was trying lots of different things to make my coaching business work. I was running seminars, I wrote a book, even built an app, and I also partnered with it's now a university, but it's one of the world's biggest professional training companies. But I just didn't have the structure and to kind of create the leverage that I wanted. I was making a lot of noise, and there was a lot of activity, and I was on paper seemingly doing some really great things, but just kind of couldn't really get the traction that I wanted or needed. And I knew there was a better way of doing things. I knew there had to be, and I knew there were deals and contracts and ways of structuring what I was doing and selling my service and packaging it that was better. But like I say, I had no overall strategy for growth or for building beyond myself. And it really felt like I was just stuck on a treadmill and there was no leverage. But luckily, I was fortunate enough to meet a few mentors who kind of slightly nudged and suggested me into various directions. But they were really high level and light touch, so it didn't give me the granularity and tactics that I needed. But one day, I got a call from one of my agents saying that someone had read some recent press about me, the press in the national newspaper mentioning me as the most expensive person teaching what I taught, and that he'd be interested in meeting me. And it's such a funny story. I went to meet this guy who'll remain nameless for his own privacy. But anyway, I went to meet him, and it was a private members club in Mayfair, just opposite the Ritz. And I go in, I remember it was a morning, and I was meeting this guy for breakfast, and didn't know who he was, just had his name. And I went into this club. It was a grand, beautiful place, like marble pillars, stunning concierge who just really, really polite and really professional. And I went in, and they said, "Oh, you're here to see this person, right?" And I was kind of ushered upstairs. I mean, it was busy downstairs, but then I was ushered upstairs, and then again, someone else was there upstairs. "Oh yeah, Mr. So and so, he's expecting you." And I was kind of ushered over into the corner of this room, this kind of grand atrium with large glass windows at one end, and went over to this guy, and he was eating breakfast, and he invited me to sit down opposite him. And I looked at him, and I said, so, kind of, slightly nervously, I guess, waited for him to finish his mouthful, and said, "Look, so, this is who I am, this is what I do, and whenever I work with somebody, the first question I always ask," this is when I was doing memory coaching as my main thing, I said, when I work with people, I always ask, what is it that you want to be able to remember more effectively? And he leant across the table and kind of beckoned me to kind of lean in. And it was an American guy. And he just said, and he was, bear in mind, he was suited, city guy, worked for a massive bank. And he just said, I just want to play the guitar. And I was like, I did not expect him to say that, of all of the things. and I thought, that's interesting and unusual. And it turned out that he raised funds for this bank, and he had a list of clients that were the top 15 private equity houses in the world, and he was newish into this job. But it was also, his passion was music, and he was in his mid-50s, and he'd started to find that it was difficult for him to remember the tunes and remember the lyrics to certain songs. I was like, okay, we can handle this, that's not a problem. And he was obsessed with Bob Dylan, loved Bob Dylan, but everybody loves Bob Dylan, but Bob Dylan can go on quite a bit, and there are very long and lyrical songs, and he just couldn't remember the words to all of them. And he was the front man of this band that he'd formed at work, and he was like, I just find it really embarrassing that I can't remember the lyrics, but also, like, when somebody says to me, oh hey, just play us a song, like, when he's got friends around or at a dinner party, and he said that his mind just went blank. Anyway, I worked with this guy and showed him how to overcome that, and he was thrilled and loved it. And I thought, there must be more to this. Like, this guy's new into his job, and he said that the meetings that he was going into at work, each of the meetings or each of the deals that he was working on will be worth in the order of several $1 billion per client. And I mean and that's kind of multiple ones of those per client, but per fund per client. And he said he'd go into meetings and not know all of the information about the client and not know the history of the fund and what have you. I just thought, wow, that is astonishing. So, but probably not that uncommon, albeit I imagine deal sizes that people work on are generally smaller than that. But So we worked on that as well, and kind of gave him the confidence that he needed to go into his client meetings and completely nail it. And I'm telling you this because this, for me, this was a taste of like me being able to going in and solving a really high value problem for someone. And how that all happened was that was not by design on my part. I didn't design getting that client. It just happened and I stumbled into it. And he also introduced me to other people and contacts of his who was like, hey, you know, you should really meet my friends. I think they'd really like what you do. And so introduced me to other people. And again, I had I didn't have the kind of the sales chops or the understanding of A, how to go about marketing myself properly, B, how to go about selling or positioning or packaging or anything like that. I happened to be serving people who had really high value problems, but kind of by chance. And this was great, and it gave me hope that rather than being stuck on the hamster wheel and the treadmill of either content creation or, you know, trying lots of different strategies, it gave me hope that I could sell what I was doing for a lot of money. And this is, you know, like a coaching package worth thousands and thousands of pounds, not tens of thousands, but like high single digit thousands. And previously I'd just been selling my service for an hourly rate, which I'm sure lots of you, if you're a coach, which presumably you are if you're listening to this, you're trying to launch your business, you've got a service, you know, you might be used to selling your thing by the hour. But I still didn't have a plan. Still didn't really didn't know how to go about doing what I wanted to do. But what this had given me was the realization that it was possible, and that it was possible to sell at a high value. And you know what? The thing that changed the most in that moment was that in my head, I became somebody who could do that. I became somebody for whom that was possible. And that is the biggest shift that you need to make. It's imagining yourself and changing your self-image so that you become that person where you can command high figures and high fees for what you do. And it helps if you have, you know, this provided me with evidence to kind of on the table of belief. This was a leg of evidence to support that table. But it really set me on the journey of, okay, let's go and figure out how to do this in a consistent way, how to do this repeatedly, and how to market. But it wasn't a straightforward journey by any means. And that's what a lot of the rest of this podcast is about, or at least the next few shows, next few episodes are going to be about that, and before diving in and interviewing other people. But I want to take you through a bit more of my journey and explain the process that I went on to discover how to go about figuring out a repeatable, scalable model. And hopefully that might help some of you figure out how to do the same thing, so you can stop charging your, I don't know, whatever it is per hour you charge, and instead package and sell your service for the value that it's actually worth. Anyway, this has been great. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure that you like this, you subscribe, and make sure you've got notifications turned on so that you get notified of when the next episode episode is coming out. Wherever you're listening to this or watching it, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or perhaps even reading it as this has been transcribed, then make sure that you tune in on the channel. That is the one for you. All right, catch you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the episode. If you want to catch more of this story and more of the journey, either for fun and giggles or to help you on your own journey, then subscribe and head over to Storythis.com/podcast. There'll be a place for you to sign up there so that you get notified of any new episode releases, as well as a bunch of extra goodies to help you figure out how to launch and grow your business, which will really help you accelerate your journey. There's some fantastic content in there. You don't want to miss it. All right, catch you in the next one.